welcome to another edition of All Things WWE on the Finished Article. My name's Shazad, and as always, I've got my co-host Shazad with me as well. So today, on this video, we are going to be talking about the Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania. And yeah, I'm just going to let Shaz get straight into this.
Right, thanks, Shaz. Thanks for the introduction. Hope you guys are well. Hope everyone's having a good bank holiday weekend. Before I kick off, if everyone could just leave a like, subscribe, and comment below, that would be greatly appreciated. And we really appreciate the support that you guys are providing. So let's get into it, guys. Now, in life, there are many things that are controversial, but as Shaz alluded to in our previous podcast around the Montreal Screwjob, we have to go all the way up to WrestleMania 30, where we have to understand why, how, and what was the rationale behind the Undertaker Streak ending. Now, let me give you a bit of context of the Undertaker Streak. This all started back at WrestleMania 7, where his first opponent was Fly Snooker. Then WrestleMania 8, Jake the Snake Roberts, Giant Gonzalez, King Kong Bundy, Diesel, Psycho Sid, Kane, Big Boss Man, Triple H, Ric Flair, Big Show and A-Train, Kane, Randy Orton, Mark Henry, Batista, Edge, Shawn Michaels again, Triple H doubleheader, and CM Punk, all leading up to.
Wow. What can you say about that list, man? It's some of the big names throughout his whole career. So it wasn't just a list of nobodies.
No, exactly. And here's my beef with this. So the way, as we've talked about it, there's forward planning, there's talking, there's planning about the future, and there has to be a creative element behind why you promote certain wrestlers. Now, all of a sudden, your boy Brock Lesnar, who's been around the business for a while, but he's mostly been part-time, so he comes in. He was massive back in the day. He fought The Rock for the WWE Championship. Back when he joined, which was quite historic because he was the youngest WWE champion. He then leaves to join UFC because he's also big in that. He then comes back and, unknown behold to all, he decides, okay, let's have a storyline with The Undertaker, which is actually quite fantastic because I think it's a huge draw. Now, one issue I've got is The Undertaker was in his prime at the time. Now, I know he'd had a few injuries, and I know he'd been in and out because he's been around for a long time. He made his debut back in Survivor Series. Back in, correct me if I'm wrong, Shaz, what was the year that he debuted?
1990, so it's just before his first WrestleMania.
Exactly. So
November 1990.
Exactly. So he'd been there 30 years, one of the legends, as Shaz alluded to. He's the locker room leader. Now, one issue I've got is, so WrestleMania has always been related to The Undertaker. So that's a huge draw. People watch it to watch The Undertaker. Those of us that were growing up in the 90s will know all about that. So that was the main event we'd most tune into. Now, I don't know whether Vince had a brain fart or whether he was getting senile or went old or he just ran out of things to do. So basically, he said that the only reason for Lesnar to streak was he's a viable candidate. So what this means,
it's not. I don't think it was the fact that he was a viable candidate. Just sorry to interrupt you, Shaz.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard that The Undertaker said the only person he would lose the streak to will be Brock Lesnar because he's his friend. Backstage, out of WWE, they are good friends. So I think Undertaker said that to Vince, and Vince said, okay, let's go with it then. You know, like Vince isn't on this. Vince has been an idiot, if you ask me. Undertaker's retired with 2 losses at WrestleMania.
Exactly, yeah.
He could have been 25-0, I believe.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah. My question
I've got is, why take it away from him at the end of his career?
That's what
I don't understand.
So here's the thing. So post WrestleMania 30, when he had that one loss, he then went out to fight Bray Wyatt, Shane McMahon, Roman Reigns, which was the second time he lost, John Cena, John Cena, and then AJ Styles, which I think AJ Styles was one of the classic matches.
Yeah, the Boneyard match, I believe. Yeah,
Boneyard
the
match,
cinematic one last year.
legendary
No, that was a
matches.
brilliant match. I enjoyed
But
it.
for me, I love that match and the way he sailed off into the center perfectly.
Perfect.
John Cena, I
Perfect.
had no idea that was a match that was 15 years too late. That should have been that was brewing out. That's just poor storyline. So that's my point. So as Shaz has alluded to, he lost to Reigns at WrestleMania 33.
Okay. I'm gonna talk on that.
Yeah.
So you've had the Undertaker lose to Brock Lesnar. So his undefeated streak is gone. He was 21-1 after the Brock Lesnar match.
Correct.
And then I don't know what Vince McMahon and WWE were thinking when they said, okay, he's lost one match, let's make him lose another to Roman Reigns. Why? Fair enough, right? So the question that you asked, this one, I'm just going to pop it up on there. Why Lesnar of all people? What did he gain? Nothing. Brock Lesnar gained nothing from beating the Undertaker at WrestleMania. Yeah, he gained nothing. I think a couple of people could have gained something from it. Randy Orton, he could have gained something from taking the streak from the Undertaker because he was the legend killer. That would have killed off a big legend for him. That would have, I don't think Randy Orton needed it at that time because he was already big as it is. The other one was Shawn Michaels. And the reason I'm saying Shawn Michaels here, Shaz, I know we've talked about this before because Shawn Michaels is one of my favorites and Undertaker's yours. So we've talked about this a lot. The reason I'm saying Shawn Michaels is because he's Mr. WrestleMania. He's the main event, the icon, the showstopper. Of all people to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, you could have seen Shawn Michaels doing it.
Yeah, I could. And this is what so what before Shaz carries on. So you then if you rewind back into history, we saw one of the greatest matches of WrestleMania history when Triple H for Undertaker at WrestleMania 28 and Hell of a Cell, and you had Shawn Michaels as special guest referee, and they labeled that match end of an era. Now, if you're going to have end of an era, you either end the era there or you then end it to Roman Reigns. So for me, I've got two ways of looking at this. I think him losing to Roman Reigns makes sense because the guy is the future. So he's almost passing the legacy and saying, look, you're now generational talent.
But the thing is, losing to Roman Reigns didn't mean anything because he'd already lost to Brock Lesnar.
No, that's what I mean.
If he hadn't had the loss to Brock Lesnar, the loss to Roman Reigns, yes, would have been a big deal. Because he is, like you said, he's one of the future stars of WWE. They're pushing him to the moon, basically.
No, and this is what I mean. So Chaz, for example, if we work together in a business and you were passing your business on and you wanted someone to take it going forward, then that's what you do. You take the loss and you say, listen, buddy, it's your time to shine. But my man drops it to Lesnar. Okay, I can understand sentimentality. You can have that. But what you got to do is then you either got to say, look, Lesnar does it, end the streak there, or you say, look, rather than him losing the streak, you say, listen, buddy, retire, go off into the sunset. Because now the problem is anyone else that does that or tries to repeat that is pointless because they can't bring back that storyline. That's just
definitely not. That you bang on. They can't do what they did with the Undertaker at WrestleMania again. I know at one point I think it was the match against Edge at WrestleMania. It was streak versus streak because Edge had I think he had like 4, maybe 5 wins at WrestleMania, I believe it were at the point. But then obviously he lost that straight away to the Undertaker. But if they wanted to continue the streak, they could have given it to Edge at that point. Have him beat the Undertaker and take his streak, and then continue his own undefeated streak at WrestleMania. But as we know, Edge did retire about 10 years ago, so it probably wouldn't have made sense.
So guys, let me fill you in, and I'm sure if anyone has had the chance to watch his documentary, The Last Ride, it's definitely worth a watch. So for me, The Undertaker has always been someone that's given back to the business. Literally, 100%. The Undertaker has died for Vince and come back. He literally will do anything for Vince.
I think Undertaker's wife in that documentary, The Last Ride, said it best. The Undertaker would take a bullet for Vince.
Exactly. So if my man's willing to take a bullet, then you send him on his high horse and say, listen, mate, I want you to go and go off into the sunset because you have done a lot for me. Now, the funny thing is, I'm sure if as Shaz has alluded to, or he will touch upon this shortly, is the Undertaker has actually been offered, or was offered back, I think last year, a new 20-year contract to tie him over to keep him protected because of everything he's done with the business. Now, if that doesn't tell you what he means to Vince, I don't know. But I just think this going back to, as we touched upon in our previous podcast around the Montreal Screwjob, forward planning, guys, what's your logic behind what you do? It's just another baffling story that could have been done better.
It's not that it could have been done better. The fact is, WWE messed up big time with The Undertaker towards the end of his career there at WrestleMania. Was it 30 with Brock Lesnar? Yes, he should have fought Brock Lesnar. They're friends. Big, it was a big match. It was a big draw. But should The Undertaker have lost to Brock Lesnar? No, he shouldn't.
No.
Should The Undertaker have lost to Roman Reigns? No, he shouldn't. The Undertaker should right now be retired at 25-0 at WrestleMania, which would have been the greatest undefeated streak for any superstar in the whole of the not just WWE, but in the whole of the wrestling industry. No one can say that you've gone 25 years at the biggest stage of them all, the grandest stage of them all, as WWE call it. No one else could have said that I've been undefeated for 25 years at the biggest pay-per-view in wrestling history. But even The Undertaker can't say that now.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, he can go down and say that I went 21 years undefeated, and then I lost to Brock Lesnar, and then I beat Bray Wyatt, and then again I lost to Roman Reigns. I mean, what's going on up here for Vince McMahon when he thought, let's make him lose to Roman Reigns and obviously Brock Lesnar as well. I mean, where did he get these ideas from?
So here's the thing. If he wanted to fight Brock Lesnar, here's my take on it. He should have done it when he was the American Badass. So if you remember when he had that gimmick and he was defending Stephanie McMahon, that was a time for him to fight Brock Lesnar, and that storyline made sense. For him to be the dead man and to lose it to Lesnar, who basically turned up dressed as a UFC fighter, makes no sense because Lesnar hasn't been seen in ages. Lesnar is basically just there because, I'll be honest with you, no offense, they've run out of ideas creatively. They're bringing back Edge, who retired, and now he's coming back. I love the guy. The guy's a legend.
They did the same with Daniel Bryan. He retired. They brought him back.
Daniel Bryan retired, and I'm like, okay, guys, if you're gonna retire the guy, let him sleep in. If you bring back people, if you had to go back to WrestleMania 27, and you then had to have Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, and Mick Foley turn up to beat up United Nations of Rusev and those guys back then.
Rusev, Bray Wyatt, not Bray Wyatt, Wade Barrett, Sheamus, and I can't remember. Jinder Mahal was the other guy.
Yeah. So
yeah, the League of Nations. Yeah, do you know what? That was a good stable. If they did that right, they could have done a lot with that stable, but they didn't do anything with them, and then they just disbanded.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. You've got talent there.
And that just goes to show the lack of future planning that WWE have. And we're going to talk about stables in a future video because that's something that we need to talk about as well. Stables within WWE. Yeah, definitely. We need to talk about that. But let's continue with this the undefeated streak. So, the question you asked, why Lesnar of all people? What did he have to gain from it? Like I said, he had nothing to gain from it. But why Lesnar? The only logical thing I can think of is that the Undertaker, like I said before, the Undertaker said the only person he would lose to at WrestleMania would be Brock Lesnar, his friend. Then that goes to show why did he lose to Roman Reigns further down the line?
That's what I mean. Shaz, we've touched upon it. I have no issue with him losing to Lesnar, provided he says, "Listen, boys, I'm done now." But then you have him for a further 5 WrestleManias. I mean, let's be honest. The farcical one, we have to talk about it, is John Cena. So, guy doesn't do anything, comes up, pops in 5 minutes. John Cena's down within 2 minutes. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, that was a weird one because we didn't even know if the Undertaker was going to show up at that WrestleMania.
Yeah, exactly.
And John Cena, I think he was sat in the crowd, weren't he, waiting for the
He's
Undertaker.
sat in the crowd. He's sat in the crowd. He's waiting. All of a
Um,
sudden, he makes his way halfway up the ramp, and the Undertaker.
then the
shows
Undertaker
up.
decides to show up, and he literally took 5 minutes to get to the ring, 2 minutes to beat John Cena, and then 5 minutes to leave the ring. So his entrance and the aftermatch was actually longer than his match with John Cena, which
Exactly. That's what
doesn't make sense.
But when we talk about planning, so what me and Chaz are referring to is we've seen WWE since the early 90s develop all the way now, and what we're saying is, guys, you have got to use a bit more common sense, because today's generation don't understand why we're so fascinated with it. Because we watched The Undertaker, we watched The Rock, we watched Steve Austin, we even watched Kurt Angle, and now
we watched some of the greats in the eras that we've watched it in, from Bret Hart to Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, The Rock, Austin, Kurt Angle, as you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
Even Edge and Christian as the tag teams, the other tag teams like the Hardy Boys, the Dudleys. Do you know what? I mean, when we watched wrestling when we were younger in that Attitude Era, that to me cannot be beaten. No one can beat the Attitude Era in wrestling. And I think
for me, the reason for touching upon this in the podcast, because I'm quite passionate about it, is it's not just myself and Chaz that feel that way. You got to think about tomorrow. You got to think about tomorrow's generation. What are they gonna? What they'll be like? You know what? This lot is rubbish, and I don't blame them. I mean, NXT right now is the best brand that they've got.
I was just gonna say that right now, NXT is the best brand that WWE have.
Exactly.
Following on from NXT, I'd go for SmackDown, just because of the storyline of Roman Reigns right now. As Shaz knows, I'm not a really big fan of Roman Reigns, but his heel turn and the way that they've portrayed him on TV as a heel, as the head of the table, it's been really good. He's done wonders with this new gimmick. And it's a breath of fresh air into WWE. I think it's a new storyline that they've actually developed, instead of regurgitating all this crap that they've been doing. And that's why I'm saying SmackDown right now is the second best show. Raw is just, I don't know, Raw's just washed up. I mean, even the wrestling in WWE isn't that good.
No.
When I say it's not that good, I'm not saying that the wrestlers are bad. It's just the matches that they're having, it's very predictable in what's going to happen.
I mean,
now I'm going to touch on something really quickly. I don't think you watch much of other wrestling at the moment, do you, Shaz? Like AEW and stuff like that.
No, I
well, if you watch an AEW show compared to Raw, SmackDown, or NXT, there's a lot more going on in an AEW show. The matches are really good. And when I say that, I mean some of the matches are predictable. You're going to get that in everywhere, but some of what happens in AEW is very unpredictable. You don't see it coming, and that's why I like watching AEW. And we will speak about AEW in future videos. Getting a segment ready to go with a couple of other hosts for AEW, so that's something to watch out for. Again, I'll definitely be in that. I'll be definitely on that show with a couple of other co-hosts. Just waiting for them to get ready, and we'll kick that off. So that'll be the third show on the finished article, along with All Things Football. We've got All Things WWE, and then that will be All Things AEW, and that will be coming in shortly. But yeah, before we do wrap this up, I just want to say thank you for everyone who subscribed. We're hitting at 46 subscribers right now.
So on the road to 100. So guys,
please. So we are on that road to 100, as Shaz just said. So please subscribe, share the channel with your friends, get them to subscribe, like the videos, and as always, leave your comments. Let us know what you think about the videos that we're doing and what you want to see. I'll hand it over to Shaz and let him wrap up.
But all I'm going to end it up and say is, guys, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us rant, because we're here to provide content for you guys. And if there's anything you want us to discuss, then by all means, feel free to share it in the comments. But until next time, guys, take it easy and see you soon.